This is the story from Independent. Trump claimed he would end the Russia war if he was president. The former president described the situation as a disaster. If I were president and I say this, I will end the war in one day. It would take 24 hours. I know Zelensky well. I know Putin well. I would get that ended in a period of 24 hours. It would be easy. The deal would be easy. Do you agree with me?
100%.
Tell me why.
Trump's going to go to Putin and say, we are ending all support for the Ukrainians in this matter. Here's the concessions we're going to make. I imagine what people need to understand about what this means. Trump likely hands over Donbass to Russia, hands over Sevastopol, Crimea to Russia. Confirmed, done, end of story. The history of what's going on in this region is very, very complicated. The average person probably doesn't know. And I can only go so far back. There's something called the Qatar-Turkey pipeline. Back in 2009, the CIA intended to oust the Assad regime because they would not allow us to build a natural gas pipeline through Syria, Turkey, into Europe to offset Russia's natural gas monopoly in Ukraine. So what ends up happening is Western powers go to Syria and say, hey, we want to build this pipeline. It's going to go through Syria, through Turkey. They say, no, explicitly. We are allied with Russia, and that would be against their interests. What then happens is, I think it was Iran and Russia say, let's build our own version of this pipeline, tapping the same natural gas source and running it up, bolstering our natural gas control into Europe. There's a lot of reasons for why the West was upset about it. One of them is that the point of the EU and the reason they want cheap energy is so they can develop economically faster to compete with China. When they were looking at this massive dependence on high-cost Russian natural gas and an inability to get any alternatives into Europe, they said, let's end Syria. Fortunately for the West, a civil war just happened to have broken out, for whatever reason, and we were on the opposite side of that. ISIS then emerges, Syria destabilizes. How very convenient. Joe Biden's son becomes a board member at an energy company in Ukraine. Surprise, surprise. Also, a former CIA director is also on the board of Burisma. Joe Biden then goes to Ukraine and tells the president, if you don't fire the prosecutor, Viktor Shokin, you're not getting $1 billion in loan guarantees, which is illegal, I might add. The vice president does not have the authority to stop congressionally approved loan guarantees to another country, but hey, they impeached Donald Trump for that, but you don't care that Joe Biden did it. I think the principal reason of what's happening here is Russia is impeding our ability to expand in Europe economically. Nord Stream 2, for instance, who blew that up? Likely, I think, what did they say?
Navy SEALs, probably.
I think they're saying it was CIA assisted.
Somebody.
And it was like the British, perhaps.
Yeah.
I got to follow up.
They don't have a clear answer, is I think the
No,
bottom
well,
line there.
But it's not
We're
Russia.
not stupid. Yeah,
Russia's not
not
blowing up their own pipeline.
Yeah,
that's
correct.
ridiculous. Yeah. But all of this it's very obvious. We have a dependence on Russian gas we're trying to resist. And so what happens with Ukraine, NATO's been expanding into Eastern Europe for a very, very long time. Estonia, Latvia, on the border of Russia. Russia has its only warm water port in Sevastopol, Crimea, which gives them access to the Black Sea, to the Mediterranean, and then outward. A lot of trade goes through there. And then what happens? The Euromaidan protests emerge, and the people of Ukraine are now split, pro-Russia, pro-EU. Most of them leaning towards pro-EU. That's what I've seen from the data, and in my personal experience, having been on the ground when that was happening and talking to the people of Kiev, even random people saying, we don't trust Russia, we know the history of the Soviet Union, the Holodomor, we want to be with the EU. So when Russia sees that happening, what people need to understand is that, shout out to Dave Smith, Russia did not, in the immediate invade, quote unquote, this is back in, I think, 2014, they were already in Crimea, in Sevastopol. They simply walked out of the base and said, hey, we're here. Now, you can argue the referendum was fake and all that, but what do you think Russia is going to do if NATO seeks to expand into a country and the EU when that's their only warm water port and access to the Black Sea? I mean,
It's fight time.
It's fight time. That's it. So you can argue that Russia started the fight. You can argue, and people say, no, NATO did. People say, no, Russia did. I'm like, dude, if Russia started putting troops in Mexico and then threatened to cut off the U.S. access in the Gulf, the U.S. is going to be them fighting words.
Yep.
And then especially if more importantly, if Russia already controlled a large portion of the border, like NATO controls, NATO is in Estonia and Latvia. Russia is already angry about this. It doesn't matter who you blame. It matters a fight will happen, and that's where we are. I think Trump goes in, negotiates. It pisses off Ukraine. It pisses off Russia, but it ends the fight.
So, but and just real quick, because I will forget. But so Tim, if Trump doesn't come in and Trump doesn't win, do you think war with Russia is inevitable with the way that things are going?
We're at war with Russia.
I agree, but I'm saying
U.S. troops are already on the ground.
100%.
The first we got the story from The Intercept. They kept denying it. It's not like it's the most people in the world. I think it's special force. It's NATO special forces and the several dozen.
Yeah.
But now it's been leaked. It's true. The U.S. is providing intelligence to you. Here's what's happening, right? If you and your neighbor are fighting with each other, and then I walk up to you and I hand you a big old pile of rocks and I tell you where to throw them, do you think your neighbor is going to be like, that guy's not involved at all? He's going to be like, this dude is the one. So we're arming Ukraine. We're telling them where to shoot their missiles.
Yeah.
The United States provided the intel to Ukraine to sink the Black Sea flagship of Russia. The idea that Putin is going, man, how is Ukraine beating us? It's absurd. Putin is saying NATO is at war with us, using the Ukrainians as cannon fodder. American citizens, as quote unquote volunteers, military trained and armed, are on the ground. It's the most ridiculous thing in the world. But people live in this reality where, because there's no formal declaration, that means United States veteran troops armed by the United States. That means we're not actually at war. Like, I'm sorry, dude. You can't have private military contractors, quote unquote volunteers from the United States and Western countries fighting a war funded by you, armed by you, and then expect to believe Russia thinks they're not fighting you. Like, Russia and Russian television outright said, we are at war with NATO.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.